I'm moving house today. It's been 2 years, 8 months and 28 days, and I've got to say that as I step off the bus for what could be the last time spent as sitting in your boss supermarket queues, etc. And I have to say though, it's only today that I'm glad to be leaving. I really will miss the when Santa today I'm sad, but tomorrow I'll be glad when Santa.
You're listening to TruthConduit.com with Chris McMillan.
Here, let me introduce you.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. Everybody, my name's Chris McMillan, and this is another episode of TruthConduit.com, and I'm here with Ricky Varandas of the Ripple Effect podcast. Ricky, you've been going a long time. When did you start the Ripple Effect podcast?
I think about 6 years ago, roughly. I think it was, probably like 6 years ago.
Yeah, you've been going. I remember I first heard you when you interviewed James Corbett, and you had Vin Cognito, and you guys did a really cool episode about aliens. You remember that?
Oh, really? You remember? Yes, I do remember that. Yeah. Well, James has been on a bunch of times. So he was actually one of my very first guests. I think I was still in single digits when he came on the show, like maybe episode 9 or something like that. And, I'm always super grateful for those handful of guests that were willing to come on. Before I really established anything, I didn't have a platform. I didn't really have many listeners or whatnot. And I'll never forget the first initial ones, because I'm still like amazed how that they were willing to come on, but I'm happy that I continued it. So they realized like, hey, I didn't just waste my time talking to a dude for an hour or two. And then next thing you know, next week they decide, hey, podcasting is way too much work. I'm just going to give up. And, but it was him, it was Jason Burmis, Douglas Ruskoff. Who else? I know Dr. Brzezinski came on really soon in first started podcasting, and Carlin. There was like a handful of people that were just super. Daniele Bignelli, super generous with coming on. And Daniele Bignelli, for a while, he was like a regular. James Corbett's still kind of a regular. Jason Burmis has become a regular of late, but I remember he kind of got out of the game for a while, and like now is back into alternative media. Yeah. So it's cool to kind of reconnect with him. But he's
been firing off reports daily. He's on fire right now. And did he just get demonetized inevitably?
Yeah, him, and I think that it was a few people all at once. I think maybe We Are Change. Yeah. I mean,
we've all seen this coming. It's just a matter of time. In fact, I'm amazed that YouTube has allowed certain channels going on as long as they have. But we're all moving, as James Corbett has sung about. Have you heard his song? We're all moving over to BitChute. Are you on BitChute?
Yeah. No, I'm not. I mean, I'm going to be eventually. I haven't found time, believe it or not, but I attempted to do it, and then it got a little difficult, and I got caught up in doing some other stuff, and then I haven't got around to doing it again. But Sam Tripoli has a website called Broken Simulation. He's putting all his video on there, so that way he kind of has archives of his stuff if he ever gets removed from YouTube again. But what he's starting to do now is get people that he trusts and people that he's a fan of, and he's just established a relationship with, and have them kind of also post their stuff on there. And it's just going to be basically I kind of like the idea of having some control of it and not having a complete free for all, because that way it's like, okay, these are people that I trust, people that their opinions are I respect, and people can come on that website and understand that like the majority of people on there are going to be people that are reliable and people who are honest and sincere. And so I think having some control of it is a good idea. When he contacted me, I know he said he was going to talk to a couple other people, and he gave me kind of just like a rundown of some of the list of people that he's going to have on. And I mean, I like the idea because it would be a nice alternative to YouTube. But I mean, he needs probably a shorter URL name. I'm like, Broken Simulation. I'm like, you need something simple, like maybe Broken Sim or something, I just feel like something that's easier to remember, maybe something easier to type if you're going to be typing it in often. But I like that idea because I've never been monetized on YouTube for avoid these issues. I'm like, I know eventually, I mean, I don't stray away from the vaccine conversation. I don't stray away from 9/11. I mean, JFK, whatever it may be. I don't stray away from any of these conversations. So I knew it was a matter of time before I probably had some issues. But I'm like, if I never get monetized, then I never have to worry about getting demonetized. So
I'm
for the
exactly
time
the
being,
same. It's never even
yeah.
crossed my mind. I don't even know if I would know how to monetize, but I do put. In the beginning, I put my episodes up on the Autonomy channel, but then if it wasn't Autonomy related, I did create my own Truth Conduit channel. I've tried to upload with BitChute. I have a channel, but I haven't uploaded anything because there's been uploading issues. But the conversation I just had at the town hall meeting is exactly up in this line of what we're talking about: solutions to this war that's being waged against humanity right now. And there are so many solutions out there. What's your take on what's going on?
Well, I mean, it's definitely a huge issue. I mean, I've had listeners all over the world contact me and send me links and send me just thank yous for being outspoken and putting out the coronavirus and COVID-19 podcasts I've been putting out of late, because I think a lot of people are probably just a little afraid of going against the grain because, one, I think there's so much information, misinformation, and that it's hard to know what to believe. So it's good to hear, I guess, people just have a logical discussion about it. But two, it's also because so much stuff has been censored, and I think people will send me. I remember just yesterday or the day before, they were telling me about how the David Icke London Real interview has been taken off from YouTube. And it's like, yeah, go Chris.
I was going to say, It has been like a game of whack-a-mole. It was taken down, someone else put it up, and in the Discord group, it came up, and I tried to download it last night, and my internet was slow. I had to go to bed. Next morning, it was gone. Somebody has got it downloaded, and also now somebody's put it on BitChute. So unless they can take it down off BitChute, it is up there. But the fact that they took it down, not very smart, because that just draws even more attention to it. So yeah, that's what anything that's relevant right now, you've got to put it on, you've got to convert it and download it, because it's going to get taken down. And of course, David Icke's probably at the top of their list.
Yeah,
have you watched it yet? I haven't been able to see it yet.
I'm trying to think. I'm almost positive somebody who listens to the show told me, like, hey, David Icke's going to be on London Real. And then I remember checking it out. They sent me the link and I almost checked it out immediately. I think it was like the next day. And I mean, he talked about some controversial stuff, but it was like, I mean, it's not anything that you can't find on other shows, vaccines, big pharma. I mean, it's all stuff that's kind of, has been discussed on my show, on Sam Tripoli's show, on James Corbett's show. So I don't know if it was so dangerous because London Real and David Icke together, they just assumed we'll gather so many views and gather so much discussion about what he's talking about and really gather attention, that they felt like it was more of a danger than the other things. But I mean, we all say it in this community. Freedom of speech is to protect unpopular speech, because popular speech doesn't need protection, so it's like, let everybody say what they want, and as intelligent humans, we decide, like, what are we going to filter out, what are we not going to filter out. I mean, I've talked about this of late, how I saw Tommy Robinson, who is this kind of a very kind of racist, Muslim disliking, religious Islam disliking person from the UK, and he's kind of been banned off all platforms. And then this show on RT had him on called Worlds Apart, and they had him on, and there was kind of a debate between the host and the guest. And I'm like, I gave so many props to the show for having him on, because he was deplatformed everywhere and nobody would have him on, and they had him on, and you can listen to this guy and you can be like, okay, his ideas are ridiculous, like what people are saying about him is more or less true. He does seem like a little bit of a racist and an extremist, and if you don't put him on there and expose what he's talking about, there's going to be a lot of people who are going to think, oh, the reason they don't want him on is because he's being truthful and then he's going against the establishment. So I think it's the best way of handling it is, like all ideas, is the wisdom of crowds. Get people together, let them decide, okay, what makes the most sense and what doesn't. I mean, that's what intelligence is. It's your ability to kind of filter out the bullshit. Can I swear on this? I
Yeah,
should
no
ask.
problem.
And filter out the bullshit and kind of figure out, okay, what makes the most sense. I mean, you listen to my show, I talk about it all the time. I mean, it's a journey for the listener and myself together. We're going on this journey together. I have people on who I agree with on some things, but I'll disagree with on other things. But I want to also entertain those things, because in the process of having my ideas challenged or listening to a new perspective, I'm going to better figure out where I stand on something or why I believe something. And, when you have your ideas challenged, that's when really you can figure out, like, okay, maybe I didn't have that as well thought out as I assumed. And that happens. That has happened to me, where times I stand or I assume I have a position on an issue or on a topic, and then somebody challenges it, and I'm like, I don't really have a rebuttal, or I really don't have an answer. And then I'm like, holy shit, I haven't thought about this that well. I should really, reanalyze where I stand and why I stand on this. And I think the origin of your thoughts are really important, because a lot of times we just might believe something or take a side without really understanding how did I get here? Like what caused me to believe this? And sometimes you realize you don't really have those answers. You don't really have you haven't really thought it out as well as you like to think you have,
And also, quite often, you've got to make sure you're talking about the same thing. You've got to define the terms that you're talking about, because sometimes you could be talking about apples and oranges and not even realizing it. And what you said, it is important to just admit, okay, look, I don't know enough about this. Let's continue this conversation further once we've done a bit of, research on that. Yeah, well said, Ricky. Where are you at?
I'm an idiot. I'm from Massachusetts.
Yeah, cool. And you're Portuguese as well. Do you speak Portuguese?
Yeah. I was born there, came here when I was 4, and then my parents, in the town that we live in, Ludlow, Massachusetts. It's kind of like outside of Springfield, Massachusetts. They call it like Western Mass. It's a small like Portuguese and Polish community. Like there's tons of Portuguese and Polish people here. So my parents grew up working for Portuguese people, going to Portuguese butcher shops, going to Portuguese bakeries. So at home, we always spoke Portuguese, because they never really picked up English that well, because they never were forced to have to pick it up. So, luckily enough, it's since I moved out, like after, as I got older, and then eventually moved out of my parents' house, I could see my Portuguese getting worse and worse, because I'm not practicing it. But I love the fact that I can still understand it perfectly, and I can still, if I went to Portugal after a couple of days or a week of speaking it, it would hopefully come back. But yeah, I'm glad that I kind of, got to keep the language in the household. And even with my kids, I try my best to try to put on Portuguese music or Portuguese. We watch some Portuguese soccer, and it's always like Portuguese analysts talking during the game, and my son gets mad because he's always like, what the heck, how come these games are always in Portuguese? I want to hear it. And I'm like, well, it's good for you to be exposed to it. I'm like, you'll pick up some stuff. And so it's so
That's
it is
Ricky. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Speaking of soccer, I'm keeping a close eye on, there are something you said earlier, they're enforcing all these rules. We got to shut down the businesses. You got to stay in the house. There are 3 countries I've got my eye on: Belarus, Sweden, of course, and Nicaragua. Nicaragua, their national league is getting on. It's business as usual over there. Very interesting to see how that is going to play out in those 3 countries, because those are 3 examples, and they're saying, yeah, we're taking precautions, but it's up to us. It's up to the business owners. Leave it up to the people. This virus is not, look at this. Look at the numbers, if they're to be believed. They're keeping the circulation going. So I'm really curious to see what will happen there.
Yeah, Sweden's doing a herd immunity type of philosophy, I think, right? They're kind of just saying, let people get. I mean, I almost feel like if this virus is as contagious as they say it is, then it's almost unpreventable that the majority of people are going to get it. So we understand. I mean, the crazy thing is, I'm not sure anybody watches these freaking press conferences, because things aren't as dire as they make it out to be when you just watch the news. Because if you watch the mainstream media, they're just showing you, and I've talked about this over and over again, how it just drives me fucking crazy how they purposely only show number of cases and number of deaths with no other information. They don't tell you what's the average age. They don't tell you if they have pre-existing conditions.
And why do you think that is, Ricky?
Yeah, they're deceiving the public, and that's the thing. Why the big why is interesting, because I'm not sure. I mean, so many different people can benefit from this. From like obviously, Johnson, who is now one of the leaders in trying to get this vaccine out. Obviously, the Democrats and the left who first tried Russiagate and now have this whole thing to kind of critique everything Trump does and try to get him looking bad and give some. I guess you have some firepower when the debates happen, because now you can just basically you have this huge event that you can critique every little thing and really get on them about. And so there's obviously and then the big everybody's getting money. I mean, the CDC is getting tons of money. That's another thing people aren't really talking about. I know Jen Brimey from Congressional Dish. She was talking about some of these bills and going through like who was getting money. And I mean, the CDC is getting tons of money with like no limits. I mean, pharmaceutical companies. So they're going to get money to develop the stuff, and then they're going to get money after we buy the stuff. So there literally is no. I mean, there's no reason why you wouldn't be pushing for this hysteria, because so many people are benefiting. So it's just so I guess the why. I think that's the thing. Like we're still kind of all in the process of figuring out, okay, why and who. But we know for sure.
Yeah, we're still in the grammar stage of the trivium.
Yeah. Yeah. No, you're right. I mean, and it's like nobody really has the answers. I mean, we have a lot of hunches and
yeah, we especially in the alternate media, those who have been red pilled for a long time now, we've got a clear idea where this could go. But there was a wrench thrown in there in all of this. As from what we can tell, the hydrochloroquine doesn't seem to have been part of this scenario. What are your thoughts on that?
So you're referring to the drug that Trump's been talking about having some success with?
Yeah, the malaria drug that's been around for 70 years. It's a generic thing, and they're using it to, especially in France, they're using it to treat patients. And now New York, I believe, is adopting it. And then I heard the other day that Bayer is going to start mass producing it. But in like the New York Times, every day you're going to see from one of the major outlets something demonizing it, and they still bring it up. Oh, because Trump supported it. They're going to use that card. But I see this as a good thing. This could be, I mean, if they've got this cure for it and it helps beat this disease, how can they justify forcing everybody to take their prescribed medication?
But what they're not also telling you is that there's China and I believe in some New York hospitals are having plenty of success with vitamin C. I mean, they're having tons. I mean, the thing is, like, if you believe vaccines work, I mean, the idea is still kind of like starting your immune system. I mean, you're sparking your immune system. So, I mean, a lot of these tests, they're not even checking if you have the virus, they're checking if you have the antivirus. If you're so. Your body's already creating, the natural force to fight the virus. So, I mean, why isn't vitamin C talked about? Why aren't we talking about the threat of everybody staying home, eating, being lazy, not getting any vitamin D, which is great for your body, not getting any exercise to keep your body healthy, and not eating correctly or maybe too much. So when then you do get sick, you're not giving your body the best chance of survival. And I think that's a huge issue too. It's like there's studies showing the vitamin C is actually helping people in some cases. Why isn't that front page news? And with this drug is, I'm kind of back and forth because I don't know if it's the agenda of they're pushing this drug away because they want to get some money to produce something new and push that, or maybe the vaccine agenda, get everybody to make it mandatory for everybody to get a vaccine. But I also don't like off-label use either. That's what's scary too, because off-label use, if people aren't familiar with what off-label use of a drug is, it's like you get FDA approved, which that's a whole nother conversation with itself if that even means anything. But
yeah,
if it does,
I agree.
Yeah. But if we pretend that means something, right? FDA approved. It gets FDA approved for this thing, to treat this thing, and then we find out like, oh shit, it kind of helps with this other thing too, and we can give it to people for that other thing, even though it was never FDA approved for that other thing. So that's what would happen with this drug. It would have to be a off-label use. So it wouldn't really have to go through any tests or safety tests or any type of, FDA approval process before giving it out to people. But if there is to me, it's like, I'm always very skeptical of big pharma. And to me, it's like, you know what, if you can take probiotics, take vitamin D, things like cat's claw, anything that's like good for your immune system, and have your body strong enough for when you get these things, these viruses or any type of cold, you can fight back, then I think that's probably your best defense against it. I mean, I'm always kind of worried about like who's pushing this and why they're pushing it, or why somebody's not pushing or not promoting this. And like you said, there's a lot of like, okay, Trump's for it, but a lot of people are saying that like he shouldn't be publicly saying that we're having some success with this drug. And I'm like, okay, who's gaining from this and why? And, so it just really makes me skeptical. It's almost like I want my destiny in my own hands. And if I can stay healthy, if I can get fresh air, if I can get some vitamin D, if I can take my, some vitamins and eat healthy and exercise and keep my body as strong as I can. So when I do get something, my chances of fighting it are greater, then that's what I'm going to do. Because the bottom line is, Dave said it, like 99% of people who died in Europe have had 2 or more pre-existing conditions and have been old. I mean, so I don't know why the majority of people are freaking out.
And now it's coming out that these people, whatever they died from, whether it was a heart attack or cancer or whatever, if they had the coronavirus at all, they counted that as a statistic of having died from the coronavirus. So you just can't trust the numbers at all. It's crazy. What I was going to say, when Trump first made that tweet about hydrochloroquine, the first people that jumped in right under him was David Rothschild's. He said, unless it's, be careful of what you're recommending unless it's scientifically proven. And we all thought that was a bit curious. Interesting. Yeah, these are good questions you're raising, Ricky. Why aren't they talking about prevention? When we saw, I would say, it was March, I'd say the first 10 days of March when I realized this is serious. So in the autonomy group, we started having some serious meetings. It was around that time. And some of us actually ordered hydrochloroquine, not knowing, this was early days. And we all ordered from the same company, and they all got stuck in limbo. They're still in limbo. It was some middleman Asian company. But what we did, we stocked up on, I started taking Liposol, vitamin C. Okay, let's get our immune system up. Let's assume, worst case scenario, you catch this. Okay, apparently it's not that bad. Let's stay healthy. So me and my family, we start taking our, like you said, up in the vitamin C, the D, getting sunshine, elderberry, just staying healthy. I had to put the beer away. I just shelved it. Okay, this space, we're going to stock up because we're about to be quarantined. We started self-quarantining about a week before we actually, maybe even a week and a half before we actually had to start self-quarantining. Now, now there's debate on whether, take precautions, but I'm starting to veer towards the other side now, just get it. Because if it's so contagious, like you said, just get it and get back to work. What are your thoughts on that?
No, I completely agree with you. I've been living my life as normal as possible. I've been bringing my kids to the park. I've been I don't even watch wrestling. My kids kind of just got into it recently because I got them the WWE app just to keep them entertained because there's nothing else on. So they're going back and watching old stuff. And I've been actually having a blast watching it from the era that I grew up watching. So I'm like, oh, this is kind of fun. So we've been watching that. And so we had some people over for the WrestleMania 2-day thing. And I've been trying to keep things as normal as possible. I am completely not scared at all of this. I don't know. I mean, there's so many questions in regards to, I've heard a good interview with a scientist, I believe, on the Higher Side Chats, questioning even if the tests work. I've heard tons of people talk about, like you said, people dying of one thing, and then because they have the virus in their system, even though the virus was not the cause of death, even if they had zero symptoms from it, just because they had the virus in their system, they were considering it a cause of death. So there's all these things you don't know what to believe. I mean, obviously China, the initial numbers, it's like, who knows? I mean, they were using, James Corbett did a great video about the CT scans and how they couldn't keep up with the lab work. So they started doing CT scans and kind of just observing the lungs and coming to the assumption that these people had it. So it's like, even the numbers, you're not even sure what to believe. But even if you believe the numbers, at the end of the day, they've been the task force, the coronavirus task force, has said over and over again, like, the majority of you are going to be okay. And if you look at, and I think that one of the big issues is that the majority of people have been very naive to how many people die in a daily basis. Because I'm like, 20,000 people die a day of hunger. This many people die of suicide every day. This many people die of, alcohol related things, car accidents, alcohol, overdose or whatever. And I'm like, this many people die of pill overdose, over the counter overdose.
People are actually dying of the normal flu still.
Yes, still. I mean, I shared an article that was from February 2nd, and it was an article talking about how everybody is, and this is before it really blew up, but talking about how the flu has already killed 10,000 people and everybody's concerned about the coronavirus. And this was in February, and they're talking about how the flu has already killed 10,000 people. And now it was hard to find that article again, because I remember seeing it, and then I'm like, oh, let me see if I can find it. And you go on Google. I've been using DuckDuckGo. I've had a little bit more luck with that.
Yeah, I use DuckDuckGo as well. Yep.
Yeah. Google, I mean, good luck with Google. If I run into an article that was interesting, and if I don't, share it immediately so I can go back on my page and look for it when I want to, it's really hard to find it, because they're just force feeding you the mainstream narrative and mainstream websites and mainstream articles and anything that kind of keeps pushing their agenda. And that was a perfect example. It was a reminder that, holy shit, we haven't even got to 10,000 people of the deaths of the coronavirus yet. And the flu was there, the second day of February. That's crazy. I mean, that's, to put that in perspective, I just think that people don't realize when they were going on with their everyday life, going to work, doing their chores, having dinners, going out to eat, whatever, they didn't realize that people were dying every day. That you weren't aware of it because the news wasn't saying one more death of the flu today, one more death here, one more death there. But if they did, you could cause the same hysteria with so many other things that kill more people. I mean, like you said, the flu, for example, if every single day on the news they were telling you the cases of the flu and deaths and where they were, then little by little we start freaking out and probably start assuming that we need to do something globally to stop this because this many people are dying or whatnot. And so it really is just a matter of people almost assuming because everybody's freaking out, there must be a reason to freak out. So many people who I go over these numbers with and talk, I try to have a discussion with them. And at times it almost seems like they're like, okay, you're right. Everything you're saying makes sense, but why are we shutting everything down? I think that's a huge motivator.
This is the good news, because people are directly affected. People who have never raised these kind of questions before, people who've always believed the mainstream media, you know what I'm talking about. One good thing that I'm seeing coming out of this is people are normal people who are severely affected by this, because everybody's are starting to ask questions. So, I mean, we're looking for solutions here, and I'm hoping that this is going to make a lot more people realize the world does not work the way they think it does.
Well, I think that's a huge part of it. I think, that people have awful long-term memory too. I mean, the government has lied to you into wars over and over again. So when people act like, oh, this is why would they lie about this and whatnot, because people's lives and jobs are in danger. It's like, dude, they've lied to you before. This isn't something new. You think about a war, for example, the amount of lives that are affected from people who lose people in the military, people who are just casualties because they're at the wrong place at the wrong time, people who come back with PTSD. I mean, what was that statistic a while ago? I think one veteran a day commits suicide or whatever it is,
yeah.
Something along those lines. I mean, think about that. Suicide, that's something that we could actually attempt to prevent and really can be avoided. And yet, nobody's making a huge deal about that. So to me, absolutely. I mean, there's too many questions. It's too obvious when you look at the way they're reporting. I mean, the initial, almost immediately when there was 40 to 50 deaths or 50 to 60 deaths, whatever it was. And when I found out that like 30 or 40 of them were in not just one state in Washington state, but in one nursing home, and nobody was fucking saying that, like, I'm like, the fact that you don't feel like that's important to kind of disclose to your audience, I knew right away. I'm like, okay, they have an agenda. They're pushing the fear. They're pushing the hysteria. They're creating all this. And the media, of course, why not milk it? Because not too long ago, the majority of people got their news off social media, Twitter, Facebook, whatnot. And now there's nothing on TV. There's nothing else to distract you. And everybody has the news on 24/7. So they're making tons of money off all this extra viewership they're getting. So that's concerning. And then you look at things like the Sky News video of the Italian hospital. And I've had people, and and people are like, oh, well, they're using stock footage. So, they do that all the time. It's not a big deal. I'm like, no, it is a big deal, because when you're talking about busy New York hospitals and you're showing a busy hospital on the screen, what you're doing is you're not coming out and telling them this is a New York hospital, but you're connecting, you're putting dots so close that any logical person is going to connect them, like, oh, they're talking about busy New York hospital. That's a busy hospital on the screen. Must be a New York hospital.
They got called out for that pretty quickly. And on Twitter, they made an apology. And my wife actually said, so do you have the original picture you were meant to put up with? I don't think they ever got back to her with that question.
Oh, so they admitted that it was a fuck up?
Was it ABC or CBS?
CBS.
Yeah, CBS. It's all the same to me anyway. But
yeah, it is. Yeah.
They did come back. It was not more than 1 or 2 days later that they did apologize and for that.
Because I had people, I was debating with this one person on Twitter forever. I'm like, listen, like, you can't say it's because apparently, and there might be some truth to this, apparently they can't film in certain places of the hospital because of some laws or whatnot. And they're like, oh, so it's quite common for them to use stock footage. I'm like, I get that. I absolutely get that. But on the bottom of the screen, put stock footage, okay? It's that simple. James Corbett and other people, when they're using film from other places, will sometimes put the source on the bottom of the screen, So, and if that was, even if you believe that was an honest mistake, okay, then you're telling me that they do a really crappy job looking at their sources and making sure what they're reporting is accurate. I'm like, so either they lied to you and you shouldn't trust them because they lied to you, or they're idiots and you shouldn't trust them because they're idiots, and they might make other mistakes that might lead you to think something is true when it's not. So either way, and then people, like I said, the stock footage thing, people are like, oh, the stock footage. But again, when you look at like all the other things, right? I'm like, if they didn't have all this other evidence that they're purposely deceiving people, like we talked about, the numbers, they only talk about number of cases, which doesn't, that number is so not relevant. Who gives a shit? You have to make it. How many of them are dying? Because if you get a bunch of people who have it, but the majority of them don't even have symptoms, or the majority of them have like cold-like or flu-like symptoms, and then within a week they're fine. Who cares? Like, it's not that important. Like, tell me how many people are dying, how many, what's the average age, the majority of people are dying, do they have pre-existing conditions. I can barely talk today.
Yeah, exactly. But whatever this is going around, it does affect sick people and elderly people. So they're the ones who should take extra precautions.
But so does the flu. I've been making the same argument. I'm like,
wash your hands, common sense. I don't know, if you're susceptible, don't go, send your kids or send whoever you can to the supermarket for you. It's not worth the reaction that's happening right now. But then again, this isn't really, this is all about the reaction, isn't it? But it's just a question of whether enough people will start to realize that this is a massive deception that's going on.
Well, James Corbett had this great link between 9/11 and this situation about how, in a way, it's like getting people, it's, after 9/11, like, they kind of capitalize on people being emotional and then reacting really quickly and just wanting to do something because everybody was upset. And then also like how everybody who was anti-war was anti-soldiers and veterans and anything that had to do with the military. So you almost didn't want to speak out against the Iraq war because they're like, oh, what do you mean America? It's freedom fries, fuck the French, and like all this stuff, and like just kind of capitalize on nationalism and whatnot. And now you kind of see like similar techniques where just like, all the people who work in hospitals are heroes and all this stuff, and all the people who are still going to work are heroes. And screw you if you're not if you're going outside and you're going places, because hashtag stay home, and this is for the greater good, and so it's like it's still like capitalizing on like, okay, so you scare the shit out of people, convince everybody that like we have to do this as a nation, and make people feel like what they're doing is a good thing. And like, so similar, like we have to do something, we have to fight terror, after September 11th, we have to come together as a nation. Like it's similar type of tactics. And you see all these people turning on each other. Like people don't want to be too close to each other, and if you get too close to them, they're getting mad. You see a lot of Asian Americans talking about racism towards them, and people looking at them differently. Obviously, every Chinese food restaurant is just probably going to be closed for a long time, even though like obviously their food's not being shipped here from China. So
most people have been programmed their whole lives to react emotionally. I was the same, it's been a slow process. It's been 10, 15 years since I started to slowly realize there's more out there, and I need to, and, I'm at a point now I would like to think because reacting emotionally and not logically is what they're counting on. So yeah, it's the same game that they're playing. And yeah, that thing that Corbett said is brilliant, because yeah, the healthcare workers are the new military. Yeah. And what the conclusion that he came to really scared me, because when it comes down to the crunch, when they really are going to present their coup de grace to the world, you're against the healthcare workers? You can see where this was going. He made a very good point. And of course, the first responders in the military after 9/11, what happened to them? They've all been spit out, used, and thrown away. So I hope the same doesn't happen with the healthcare workers. There are great people working away who really are trying to do a good thing here. They're not part of any of this that's going on. But when they're the ones knocking on your door with, you know what I'm going with this, Ricky.
Yeah, well, it eventually turns into martial law. And that's the thing. Like the scary part is little by little, we are just accepting that this is just what we have to do. And we're just giving up everything we love. They took down basketball hoops. I don't know how it is. You're in Texas, right?
Yeah.
It just happens that I'm wearing my Dirk Nowitzki jersey the same day that you're, I'm talking to somebody from Texas. But yeah, there people. They took down basketball hoops because God forbid kids get together and play basketball. Like, what the fuck? Kids aren't even at risk. Like, kids in their teens are not at risk at this. Like, the same people are at risk are the same people who are at risk during a bad flu season. Like,
they're out of control in the UK. I saw a story the other day. A couple who lived together were sitting on a bench, and a cop came and said, "You need to separate." And said, "Well, we live together. If you don't separate, I'm going to fine you."
That's
these are stories
crazy.
that are coming out. It's not about the virus. And I'm sure you've seen the memes, the cops arresting the guy that went out on the surfboard. And why aren't these cops wearing masks and gloves? Again,
well, if somebody tries to arrest me, I'm going to cough and all over them and sneeze all over them and just freak them out.
If this virus is really so dangerous, why are not the cops? Why aren't they wearing masks and gloves? They're in there, and you saw, again, the kids' party, they broke up. They're all, arm in arm, looking all tough and mighty. It's not about the virus. Is it safe to say, Ricky, based on everything that we know at this point, this is just one big psyop?
I have to believe, I think the origin of it is still kind of interesting. Is it biological? Is it or man-made, or was it just nature saying we're going to filter out old sick people? But I think that's been kind of a really interesting question, because nobody seems to have, people have theories, but there's no real evidence and nothing yet concrete that you can be like, okay, that definitely makes the most sense. There's been a lot of weird things, like obviously the whistleblowers in China initially kind of disappeared. The first couple doctors who were speaking up about it. There's Wuhan, they were spraying what some people have said has been like the S, because there's like 2 strains of it. There's a S strain, like a L strain. Now they're saying there's like up to 8 strains now. But apparently, if you get the S strain and it's not as lethal, like it's very mild symptoms, but you become immune to the L strain, which is the lethal strain. So there's all these weird things, and China saying that the military put a barrier, which I past them. I mean, I wouldn't put any of this past anybody. I mean, I would, like, when you've been researching history and you find all these crazy stories of like operations, weird operations, and things that don't seem like could be possibly real, and you find out there's like declassified papers showing that this did happen and that did happen and they did do, like, there, nothing is, to me, is too crazy to believe. I mean, I will entertain all theories because I've been wrong before. I'm like, oh, that sounds too crazy. And you look into it, you're like, holy shit, there's some truth to this. So yeah, without a doubt, if it's a psyop or not, people are absolutely capitalizing on it. They're going to use this to track people. I mean, you're already hearing about software to track people, so you know who has the virus and not to get too close to one another. They're using it to give tons of money to big corporations, which I'm sure will do them favors later by giving them campaign money. There's just so many people who are going to benefit from this, that without a doubt, regardless if it was man-made or nature-made, that there's it almost doesn't seem as important as the rest of it, the reaction to it, how far people are willing to let the government do things like force people to stay at home. And I mean, they're not calling it martial law, but it might as well be martial law. I mean, in Massachusetts, it's a lot of this is like recommendations, but you've gotten to the point where it might as well be martial law, because all the parks are shut down. You have you go to a grocery store, you have to be 6 feet away from people, and you have to wait in line. They have a maximum capacity of whatever, like 20 people, or whatever, and you have to wait outside. So it's like you kind of feel like you are living in communist China, or the Soviet Union, or or even in Portugal when they had Salazar, the dictator. They didn't let groups of people get together. Why? Because they're worried that you're putting together a revolution or speaking about politics and something that was anti-government. So yeah, I mean, there's so many people who can benefit from this. And then obviously, I'm sure you've talked about Event 201 and all that stuff. And
yeah,
so it just,
yeah. I mean, Trump said, "Oh, we didn't see this coming." He must have seen this coming, or maybe he didn't. I don't know. I suppose he doesn't sit around and watch things like Event 201, but surely somebody.
Yeah.
You would think, but Event 201, they clearly laid out, and not to mention all the predictive programming going years past. There's quite a few videos out there. I haven't watched it yet. There was it was from 2010, a Rockefeller Foundation video, pretty much played out the same story. There is so much to this. Yeah,
well, Neil Ferguson, I mean, look at Neil Ferguson, you talked about the UK, how bad it's gone. His graphs search, is what provoked this complete shutdown. And then he backtracks and says, oops, I overestimated this. He went from like millions of deaths to like, a number that was the equivalent to a bad flu season. And it's like, you just provoked a complete shutdown of a country, and now you're just like, oops. And even Dr. Fauci, which some people might not know, he was a part of the AIDS epidemic hysteria. I mean, he was like part of the task force then, and they predicted like millions of deaths, and he was completely off and wrong. And he even said, he's like, I'm glad I was way off and wrong, because at least it got people to take this seriously and whatnot. And so these graphs, that's the other thing. Like, you get somebody who really understands these graphs and how to put together. They will tell you, like, they're only as good as the information you put in there. And a lot of that information you're putting in there are assumptions. So it's like, you can kind of do what you want to get the outcome you want. And then we just look at a graph like, holy shit, look how dangerous this is. I mean, the fact that the flu is still killing more people than the coronavirus in the US, and yet there's a treatment for it, supposedly there's a vaccine, then that's should make people think, and people are talking about, well, the quarantining is going to help the bring these numbers down. Well, then the same thing for the flu. It should bring the numbers for the flu down, and yet the flu's still going to surpass the coronavirus. So if you're comparing apples to apples, are we saying that every single year, if we get these amounts of deaths, that it's going to now justify the same reaction. And are the American people going to be okay with that? Are they just going to be like, okay, we're just going to be okay with like our favorite restaurants having to shut down, loved ones were struggling with money, losing their job, having to go on unemployment every year, and the uncertainty of knowing how many months and weeks is going to go for, and when am I going to be able to find work again? Kids are going to lose, which I guess isn't a big deal because I hate school anyways. But kids are going to lose the majority of the school year. Like
Definitely
this is all just
silver lining in all this is that right there.
Yeah. So that's what's scary. Is like, has this created a new trend? And the thing is, like, if we look at past viruses, the H1N1, swine flu, whatever it may be, like those killed, according to what we've decided now, is will justify this type of reaction. Those flus, those viruses would have also justified the same reaction. So it does seem kind of, I'm kind of curious on why this one
why now?
did that. Yeah.
And it seems like last year there were a lot of massive protests. Do you remember going on here
Hong Kong?
Particularly in New Jersey and in, about the vaccines, all the moms got together and put those down on a few times. And so it could be a number of factors that have made them decide, we got to do something. And
Hong Kong protests, France where it had a bunch of protests. So, I mean,
the yellow vests.
I mean, so you look at all these countries that had protests that were kind of getting out of hand. And I mean, really, the governments were starting to get scared of a possible political revolution or whatever it may be. This is a great time and a great reason to just be like, hey, we're not purposely trying to shut down these protests. We're letting people speak, but because of the greater good, we have to, shut down the whole country. Like you're basically getting people to. I mean, it's like that boiling frog, metaphor. It's like you put a frog in a boiling water, it's going to jump out. But if you slowly start turning up the heat, next thing you know, it's going to be. And the same thing with martial law. Like next thing you know, it's going to be. We're going to keep giving up our rights, keep giving up everything, and next thing you know, it's like, oh shit, we live in a martial law society, and we didn't even notice it because it was little by little. We just kept giving it up, and it wasn't all at once. And it's like the same thing's going to happen. Again,
until those cops start wearing masks and gloves, people should really start wondering, is this really about the virus? Because, what do cops know? Do they know something we don't? That at base level, I'm putting myself in the point of view of someone, a normie who's sitting there in his living room, watching the news, and he sees a group of cops. That should raise the question. Hold on, cops, they don't, aren't they in danger of getting it?
Trump's not even wearing a mask. They asked Trump about a mask. He's like, "No, I'm good." They're like, he's like, while I'm greeting kings and queens and presidents of countries, I don't want to be wearing a mask. So he has access to all the head scientists and doctors and researchers, and he's at all these meetings.
Sorry, Ricky, who did you say? Who are you talking to about?
Oh, Trump. Trump.
I didn't
during a press conference, they asked him about, like, why aren't you wearing a mask? And you could see he kind of brushed it off. He's like, no, I'm good. Like, he's not worried about it. Like, he's not, and he has all the information. He's dealing with the task force. He's there during these meetings, and even Trump's like, no, I'm good. I don't need to wear a mask. Like I'm because he understands. Like, and the thing about these press conferences is that they're saying, like, they are saying, who, Dr. Birx and Dr. Fauci, like, these graphs, yeah, they can be a little off because, it's only as good as you're inputting, as the information you're inputting. And a lot of that put in information is our assumptions and based on, like, maybe what's going on right now, but that changes in a day or whatever. And they're also saying that, like, the majority of people are going to be okay. The majority of people are going to be okay, but yet the majority of people are freaking out. I'm seeing, so anytime I post something online that is contradicting the narrative, and people will immediately start, like, debating me, and I'm super polite, and I try to be nice, and I try to have a nice discussion with everybody and a polite discussion with everybody. And for the most part, like, eventually it does seem like, once they start seeing where you're coming from, they kind of get it, but I keep hearing, but it's going to get worse, but it's going to get, like, okay, so we're just going to shut down the world for something that's going to get worse. Shouldn't, like, what if somebody assumes, hey, next year is going to be a really bad flu season, and based on some bullshit information we just gathered, we're going to have a really bad flu season. Let's shut everything down prior. It's like, is that okay?
So many contradictions out there right now that don't make sense. And I just hope enough people will start to see what's going on. And I don't know, have you noticed, are people starting to turn to the alternative media a bit more? I don't know. It seems like we've been getting a lot more people coming into our COVID-19 channel in Discord. But
I know my podcast has, it seems like since I've been covering this coronavirus stuff, I feel like a small business, like it's just like a small mom and pop business, like a lot of word of mouth. Like I have a lot of listeners saying, "Hey, great podcast with Dr. Kendra Becker on COVID-19. I've been sharing it with all my friends and this and that." So I've been having more and more people just contact me, send me links, like stuff that they're finding. And also the nice thing too is because the internet obviously is worldwide, I get to talk to people from the UK, people from Eastern Europe, Western Europe, Asia, and I'm talking to listeners, and even locally, like in Springfield, which is like the biggest city in my neck of the woods. I have friends that work at the hospitals, and they're all saying kind of the same thing. Like the hospitals aren't as busy that the media is saying. Like everybody that I've talked to that works at a hospital has said, no, we're not that busy. And in some cases has said we're actually slower than normal right now, which is unusual. And then I'm talking to people from all over Europe and other countries, and they're all saying the same thing in regards to, like, I know the news is telling me like the freaking sky is falling, but I don't really know anybody who's sick. I don't know anybody who's dying from this.
There is an explanation for the hospital thing, and that is that they've shut off all the other services. So the key is to, when they say it on the news, is hospitals overwhelmed, then go there as soon as you can and then see if they're actually telling the truth. It does make sense, because and nobody would want to go to the hospital at this point. I certainly wouldn't go. I'd rather stitch myself up than go to the doctor at this point, man. These are,
well, there's Instagram pages and there's a Facebook page of like Film Your Hospital, and there's people going around filming hospitals, and you could see like there's no, I mean, Dr. Kendra Becker was when she was on my show, she talked about how she went to like her two like local hospitals, and she sat there and she sat there and she sat there, and it didn't look busy and it didn't seem overwhelmed. And I mean, even the respirator thing, I mean, New York got caught with a bunch of respirators in a warehouse, and I mean, they just keep the states are going to ask for more shit than they need, because they're going to try to get free shit from the federal government. I mean, that's what they do. I mean, how many times we have a family-owned construction company. I see it all the time. Little towns who don't need the money will be like, hey, we got this grant for sidewalks. We really don't need to put any new sidewalks in, but if we don't use it, we lose it. So we're going to redo this street that's in pretty good shape when the town next door needs the money.
Very good point. They're starting to give out money. We just had a discussion before about the Federal Reserve and what it looks like they're putting themselves into a position where they're just going to really start buying up all the small like countries, and basically they're really trying to implement UBI in their own way, and this is kind of a test for that. They're sending everybody out $1,200 or something, whether you want it or not. I say take it, and until there's a string attached, since they taxation is theft. But if they're just inventing, punching a number on a computer and making this out of thin air, is it theft? I don't know. But use that money and turn it into an asset. Use it to further put yourself in a defensive position for when you have to make evasive maneuvers for whatever end game that this is. And their end game, it's no secret. Bill Gates has clearly said, we're going to have a special interior passport, and if you've got the antibodies, you can travel. Otherwise, you're stuck at home. This is what they want. This is all about eugenics and power and control. And it's very it's important to stay positive and keep an eye on things and talk about solutions. We were talking about mesh networks, how to, creating own currencies, small community. I didn't know this. I recently found out during the last Great Depression, there was like 3,000 smaller local currencies created during that time. People just created their own money in their communities. What can they do when you start doing that? There are solutions. It's going to be a whack-a-mole game. It's going to be interesting. But I think to be optimistic. A lot of people are starting to see through what's going on, and we've just got to keep getting ourselves out there, Ricky. I hate Facebook, but I'm at this point, until they take me down, I'm going to keep putting the memes up and hoping that it'll make people think, make people ask questions.
And it does. It does. Just you're planting the seed. Even if like just one person who sees it starts questioning it a little bit, then they see something else, and they see something else. Next thing you know, they're thinking like, "Holy shit, they're right. This isn't making a whole lot of sense." And I'd like to hope. I mean, like, two things are going to happen. Either people are just going to accept this, and people are going to, big corporations, government, everybody's going to benefit from it, except the average person. Or eventually, people are going to be like, you know what? Like, I don't see anybody dying. I don't see this being much worse than the flu. Like, no, I mean, this is ridiculous. Like, I'm giving up everything I enjoy. Like, you only on average live till you're 80. Like, and you're just going to say, hey, for a couple months of your life that you're never going to get back, you're going to be quarantined.
Ricky, I'm going to live to 100, man.
And there are some crazy people out there who think they're going to live way past that. And, you hear stories of like using child blood and whatnot, and then
let's not go.
Who knows?
What you mean? We could go there, and that's a whole other episode right there. I know what you mean. We can't let fear control us. So we've got to stay vigilant and observant, and keep our thinking caps on, discerning fact from fiction. Try not to get too emotional. It does get scary. I've had a few freak out moments in the beginning. I went through a few days of acceptance of the new situation. And then, once he got through, I've got my kids to fight for, and I will fight for them tooth and nail. And hopefully, the smart ones will be able to avoid, situations where you won't have to fight, but prepared if you do. And I don't mean that in a physical sense. I kind of do, if it comes down to that, but more in a, cat and mouse kind of thing, because we can see their game. We see what they want. It's just a matter of, how, when the rubber hits the road, how will it actually affect us directly? What will we be able to do and not do when it comes down to it?
And the world needs people like you and I and many others who are willing to question things, willing to post articles, be outspoken when you sincerely are doing it for the sake of like, hey, I'm trying to spread some truth. I'm trying to let you know that like we're being taken advantage of. And even if it comes with some backlash, like you need to speak out. I mean, my wife, for example, like for a while wasn't even telling her dad when he would call that she was leaving the house because she's like, I don't want to argue. I'm like, I get it. But I'm like, I kind of feel like when people ask me things, I'm like, if I'm going to lie about like where I stand on vaccines or lie about, where I stand on this issue or any other issue, then I'm like, I'm kind of contributing to the bullshit I'm trying to fight. And I don't want to do that. I don't want to contribute. I want to be honest and say this is where I stand, and if you want to talk about it, we can have a real discussion about it, and really
NVC and nonviolent communication. One of the many skills that most people may not have heard of. It's an excellent way to go about it. Is your wife? Is she? Where's she from? She from Massachusetts?
Yeah, she's from Massachusetts. She's from Springfield originally.
Yeah, cool.
So and then we met through a mutual friend, and she's still bugging me about she's never been to Portugal, so I have to take her there one day. I haven't been there since I was like 16 or 17. 16. So it's been a while for myself too. I'm turning 35 soon.
I've seen pictures of you on social media, and the way the family gets together, and I remember at one point I thought, were you in Portugal? It looked like but it wasn't. It was just a Portuguese dinner or whatnot. Speaking of solutions, this is something we're doing in Richard Grove's autonomy class. We're adapting to this situation. There are new sectors that are going to go up, and we're all just honing in our skills, anything to do with whether it's video editing, marketing, podcasting, sales, copywriting. His autonomy course, we're getting more and more people, training people and learning to think critically. This is a good thing. This is happening right now. We are out there doing something, and we've created also this COVID-19 separate channel for people who are concerned, and they want to really get involved and try to figure out what the truth is about this. So these are solutions. We're working on solutions. By the way, of which, if you're on Discord, I will send you an invite. I would love to get you in on the channel. You're welcome anytime. Just keep that in mind. We've got, who's in there? We got Brett Venant, James Evan Pilato's in there, Michael Badnarik, Richard Grove, of course. A lot of names you would recognize were in there. A lot of top researchers, hard-hitting, critical thinking people that are part of the Autonomy group. And some have come over from Media Monarchy as well, and from Derek Brose's group in Conscious Resistance, the Conscious Resistance Network. We're all coming together trying to discern fact from fiction and figure out where this is going in order to adapt and prepare for the next move. That's what's going on. So there are good things coming out of this. People are working tirelessly around the clock to figure out what this is. But I just think, that's why I wanted to get your point of view. You've got, your podcast and a whole separate audience as well. And we've got to get together, man. We've got to keep sharing ideas and thoughts and observations.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you. I mean, one thing I love about my podcast is, like, for example, just a couple episodes ago, I had a Bellator MMA fighter, and he shares his stuff on his Instagram or wherever. And then maybe some people who want
what fighter?
It was Pedro Cavallo. Carvalho. He's a Bellator. He was actually supposed to fight in Mohegan Sun down in Connecticut. Are we talking about boxing or wrestling? MMA. Bellator is like the competitor for like UFC. Yeah.
Cool. And you had him on your show. I didn't see that.
Yeah, I just had him on a couple episodes. Real fun conversation. But I like having these like random musicians and comedians and people from outside the norm in the alternative media world, because a lot of people who are going to come on to listen to a conversation with that person is going to eventually, they're going to end up looking at maybe my other shows, and next thing you know, they're gonna be like, oh, you know what, like, let me check out that conversation, and they'll be exposed to, maybe Richard Grove. I interview with Richard Grove, or maybe James Corbett, or whoever it may be. And so there's a lot of like just intertwining with fans, and so that's kind of the goal. I know that that's what Rogan's done in the past, where he's exposed a lot of people who might know him from comedy, or might know him from MMA, or might know him from something else. And then next thing you know, he has a guest on you're not familiar with, a Graham Hancock or whoever, and you're like, oh shit, this guy's really interesting. Yeah. And
crossing over, man, there's going to be a great crossing over. Yeah, from the alternative to the independent to the normal. Ricky, we got to get going. I really appreciate you coming on to talk to me. I'm really glad to. It's a shame. I missed you in Hartford last summer. You were there, apparently. I didn't get to meet you in person. But
were you? You were there, right?
Yeah, I was. But in any case, what plugins do you have? Where can people listen to your podcast?
Yeah, well, it's www.therippleeffectpodcast.com, and then obviously it's everywhere you can get podcast digital downloads. You can get them at Spotify, Google Play, iTunes, Podcast Addict, every app that's available. You can get the podcast. It's also on YouTube. YouTube, obviously, it's a long form conversations, and so I don't do too well on YouTube, but I like to keep it there because I'm hoping, even though YouTube's suppressing a lot of alternative perspectives, maybe one or two people might run into it eventually. So I figured the more platforms I have it available on, the better. I'm like you with Facebook and Twitter and Instagram. I have my issues with them, but for the time being, if it's a tool I can use to kind of help, create a ripple and kind of share these hopefully thought-provoking conversations, then that's what I'm going to do for the time being. So on Twitter, I'm
man. I didn't know what that meant until I started video editing when I started this podcast just last April, almost a year now. And I said, that's where Ricky got the idea, the ripple effect. So
yeah.
Well done. And I love your intro song, man. It's like, I just want to start dancing.
Yeah, it's my solo music project. It's called Theory 6, and you can get that anywhere you can get digital downloads. The song's actually called The Ripple Effect, and then that title of that song is what I'm like, that's I like that idea. I like the whole theme. I like, what it means. And so then it became a podcast. And and then it's RV Theory 6 on Twitter, Instagram, We have a Ripple Effect Podcast Facebook page. I also have a personal Facebook page, which I always tell people, just let me know that you're not a bot or some robot or trying to sell me something or send me porn, and I'll be cool with accepting any friend requests anywhere. So, which I like hearing from the fans. I like talking to people. I know I have a hard time keeping up with sometimes with like messages and stuff. So like sometimes I wonder, I'm like, how the fuck does a James Corbett do it? Because I could just imagine how many freaking emails he gets. And for the fact that he responds to as many people as he does is mind boggling. But
time management is an art upon itself. Something I'm getting better at. But time management, man, it's all about divvying it up, especially when you got kids. I know you got to get going, Ricky. Again, thank you very much for
thanks, Chris. I appreciate the time. Fun conversation. Hopefully we can do it again in the near future, and keep up the show, man. I'm so glad you're doing this. I mean, we need more people doing more shows. Cool thing about the podcast world and alternative media world is that instead of people like hating on each other, they're very supportive, and it's awesome that, you can just hit up somebody like, hey, you want to talk, you want to do a podcast, and everybody's super cool with doing that. So and the more of these type of conversations we get out there, the better, so
it's because we all can see the man behind the curtain and the rest of the world can't. So we've got that in common. We're just trying to pull back the curtain. Yeah.
And I think when you meet people who are doing this type of work, it's weird calling it work because I mean it's enjoyable, but for lack of a better term, this type of work, you find out that like you're motivated by sincere reasons, and there are people who really truly just want to leave the world a little better than they received it, and do their best of attempting to do something. Just getting some fulfillment in doing something, and doing something is better than not doing anything. So I think that's a huge motivator for all of us. It's just, it's just, we really are. You meet people. I mean, I've rarely have met somebody in this world where I'm like, I don't like that person, or he seems fake, or it's always like, wow, they seem really cool, and they seem like they're motivated the same way I'm motivated to kind of just, make the world a little better. And so, I think that's another thing we all have in common.
Excellent, Ricky. All right. Thank you very much.
Walking down the street where children play, for them it's just another day. The future's reflected in their parents' faces, who chose to stay on in this place where they were born, went to school, got married, and kids like their grandparents before them did. Got to escape, before it's too late. Although today I could say that I really will miss the when Santa.
You've been listening to truthconduit.com with Chris McMillan. Go to the subscribe page and sign up to get notifications of the latest posts. And check out the support page to help keep it going.
Yeah, I've got a friend in Jesus Christ. I've got a friend in Jesus Christ, and Krishna and Buddha and my bartender.